Every experience is a story. Every story can take a different spin. How we maneuver our way through life's varied ups and downs is a direct result of what we tell ourselves and others about what we encounter in life. Consider the following tale. Once upon a time, there were two little girls. They were twins. They were alike in every way but one. One child was a hope-filled optimist who only ever saw the bright side of life. The other was a pessimist of the deepest kind who only ever saw the downside of every situation. The parents were so worried about the extremes of optimism and pessimism in their daughters, so they took them to the doctor. And the doctor suggested a plan. On the youngster's next birthday, give the pessimist a shiny new bike and the optimist a pile of manure. Well, that seems fairly extreme for sure. After all, the parents had always treated the girls equally. But in this instance, they decided to try the doctor's advice. So when the twins' birthday came around, they gave the pessimist the most shiniest, expensive, top-of-the-line racing bike. When she saw her bike, the first word she said was, "I'll probably break my leg." To the optimist, they gave a carefully wrapped box of manure. She opened it, looked puzzled for a moment, then ran outside screaming, "You cannot fool me. Wherever there is this much manure, there has to be a pony out here somewhere." That's not a true story, obviously. Optimist, pessimist, hopeful, hopeless, realist, dreamer, naive one, sophisticated one. Most of us aren't quite so polarized. However, many of us tend to lean in one direction or the other. So my goal this morning is not to persuade or chide folks into leaning one way or the other. This morning I simply want to say, as the new year ensues, bring your whole self to the present moment. Bring your tired, your sorry, your sad, your teary, your joyful, your happy, your disappointed self to life's offerings, such as it may be. I say disappointed because I too struggle to keep an equilibrium while I live in a country that causes and creates hardship for others here and abroad. I too have heard the phrase, "Okay, Amy, the situation is very complex," and still, I shudder knowing there is only so much I can do. So yes, bring your blah, 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 humbled, glum self to our assembly here and take some comfort in gathering with others who also wear perplexed opinions, who know the cost of carrying the weight of worry and concern. So life is a river, they say. Each of us at one time or another, maybe right now, each of us has maybe personally circumvented white water. You know, the rocky, the scary, the rough, unruly kind. Try as we may in our personal lives and certainly in the lives of complete strangers who are struggling, we are often limited in our ability to change the direction of the current. So for the most part, we are at mercy of the rapids. Our only goal is to navigate the ride as best we can and to try to avoid the boulders that will tip us over. When we do find ourselves without a raft, may we take comfort in knowing we are surrounded by people here, helpers who are eager to reach out to assist when needed. I said one of the things I love about being a minister is I get to see the sweet things people say about each other, but I also know the stories and how deeply some people are in pain, and then how miraculously, someone from this group comes forward to help. I have seen individuals in this congregation save one another in times of love, loneliness, and bouts of illness, through loss, heartache, and more. Helpfully, on more than one occasion, and hopefully, I hope in the midst of concern, we are able to raise our heads and see the beauty that surrounds us daily, to be grateful and to embrace the opportunity to breathe, to simply notice the gift of breath, to make a difference where and when we can, and to persevere even when bad news breaks our hearts and we feel like sinking again. Several years ago, a colleague, Reverend Dr. Galen Gingrich, I'm not sure she's senior minister anymore at All Souls in New York City, but she was telling a story about when she visited a congregation member named Monica, who had been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. The woman, originally from Malaysia, was a mother to a 12-year-old little girl named Jordan. The illness showed symptoms long before the doctors were able to identify it. So it was too late. She had days. That afternoon, the minister had been talking to Monica about her wishes, especially how she could ensure that her daughter would remain in the United States, the place of the child's birth. As they were talking, the little girl, Jordan, bounced in back and forth into the room. She was chatting about which teachers were her favorite, about her new hairstyle, and how it made her face look square. She wasn't sure about that or not, and about the talent of her famous singer, the one that she loved the most. Reverend Dr. Gingrich wrote, during that conversation, a line from the poet W.B. Yeats came to mind, in which Yeats speaks of the ceremony of the innocents. The excerpt that came to mind was, the blood-dimmed tide is tossed and loosed everywhere. The ceremony of the innocents is drowned. Gingrich continued, my conversation with a dying woman and her daughter was, in its own way, an attempt to gather up everything that mattered to the three of us at that moment and to hold it close and make it whole. The fact that Monica was dying did not mean that Ashley Simpson, Jordan's favorite singer, by the way, was irrelevant to her daughter, nor did Jordan's concern about how her hair looked mean that her mother would not die. None of that would change, nor did the fact that I, who was the minister, said Reverend Gingrich, didn't go home and hug my wife a little longer, and my daughter a little urgently. No matter how difficult our circumstances or how dire our situation, we need a way to pull everything together and celebrate wholeness, such as it is. We need to affirm what is true, cherish what is beautiful, and embrace what is lovely. The necessity of religion emerges from this deep-seated and long-standing human need for wholeness, said my colleague. So aside from our cynicism and our despair over the suffering that exists in the world, our critique of the cruelty in our political system and leadership, our anger at how ICE arrives tearing apart families, our concern for trans individuals who are strangers and who are part of our families, our frustration over how rude, cruel, and inconsiderate people can be, we have to find ways to thrive, to remain above water. Incidentally, in the poem Yeats wrote, it's called The Second Coming, there was another line. It was, by the way, this poem was written in 1919 after the First World War. Yeats wrote, "The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. All these years later, wow. So even when we hold the suffering known to be present around us and in the wider world, our ability to do anything at all, even something as minor as saying a kind word to someone, as having a smile, as opening arms to somebody who might need a hug, something that little is to resist becoming part of the force in the world that creates suffering. Even as we recognize suffering, we need to remember to affirm what is true, cherish what is beautiful, and to embrace what is lovely at the same time. At all times throughout this year, we are invited over and over again to open our hearts, even when our hearts are breaking. To return to an occasion when we view the world with the intention of finding wholeness in our experiences, in relationships, and in what is going right instead of what is always going wrong. As we pause on this fourth day of a new year, maybe a little snow globe of wonder couldn't hurt any of us. Now, could it? Nicholas Kristof wrote in a recent article titled, "In which I try valiantly to cheer you up," he wrote these following words. "This is the season when I customarily argue that the year just ending has been the best in human history. So I doubtfully sat at my computer, my laptop, to write something along the lines of, sure, democracy is ending, politics are toxic, wars are raging, America is losing allies, the planet is burning. I don't know about you, but I could just lay on the floor, right? Okay, I'll go on with his words. Young people will never afford homes. But other than that," he continues, "I can't go there anymore. I have done best year ever columns annually, irritating all the Eeyores in society. But now I just can't. The year 2025 was a setback for humanity. And unfortunately, the U.S. has been partly a reason for that retreat." Okay, so at this point, he doesn't back all up what he's saying with statistics as he analyzed the state of the union. Frankly, I don't think any of us in this room will argue otherwise, right? But the journalist does offer a wee bit of hope at the end. This is part of rounding out our attitude. He said, while 2025 wasn't the best year in human history, we are still in good shape. Think of this. If you measure human history by child mortality, he's talking about in the world, it was one of the best 5 years ever. One of the 5 best years ever. Fewer than half as many children died in 2025 as in 2000. Until around 1970, a majority of adults had always been illiterate. Now we are at 88% worldwide adult literacy, in part because of increasing numbers of girls going to school, and those educated women transform families, economics, and societies. Of the other points the journalist made, this is the one that caught my attention. Quote, "It took 68 years from the invention of the solar cell in 1954 to install the first terawatt of solar power on the planet in 2022. He said it took 2 more years to get the second terawatt. This is because solar is increasingly cheap and simple." He said, remember the line in The Graduate, in the movie The Graduate, when the man said, plastics, it's all about plastics. This journalist said, today one word might best describe it: batteries. Solar batteries. So My invitation to you today, aside from the journalist article, by the way, that was in the New York Times, is to resist falling into a stupor of what is the use, and to resolve becoming the angels so many of us sang about a little more than a week ago. Not the ones who loftily float above us, but the ones who move among us every day and occasionally save us, and sometimes even from ourselves and our own attitude. I'm speaking about human angels who listen when we weep and let us rant and then say, "Oh, I see that you're angry and that you're struggling. I see that it's hard." Let us especially celebrate those angels among us who love us and make us laugh. Speaking of angels, I have to share some thoughts by children, the wise ones in any community. Here are a few comments from young people who were asked to explain angels. 5-year-old Gregory said, "I only know the names of 2 angels, Hark and Herald." One child said, "Everybody's got it all wrong." 9-year-old Olivia said, "Angels don't wear halos anymore. I forget why, but scientists are working on it." In his 9-year-old wise years, Matthew stated, "It's not easy to become an angel. First you die, then you go to heaven, then there's still the flight training class you go through, and then you got to agree to wear angel clothes." Mitchell, age 7, said, "Angels work for God and watch over kids when God has something else to do." Jack, age 6, said, "Angels don't eat, but they do drink milk from holy cows." Oh, thank you for moments of laughter, right? Thank you. Author, philosopher, theologian, educator, and civil rights leader, the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman wrote a poem titled "The Singing of Angels." There must be always remaining in every life some place for the singing of angels. By an inherent prerogative, throwing all the rest of life into a new and creative relatedness, something that gathers up in itself all the vastness of experience from drab and commonplace areas of living and glows in one bright light of penetrating beauty and meaning, and then passes. The commonplace is shot through with new glory, new hope. Old burdens become lighter, deep and ancient wounds lose much of their old hurting. A crown if places over our heads that for the rest of our lives we are trying to grow tall enough to wear. Despite all the crassness of life, despite all the hardness of life, despite all the hard discords of life, life is saved by the singing of the angels. And I will have sometimes those angels walk on this earth. Dear ones, recognizing the frailty of life, noting the heartache of watching and experiencing hardship, may we all resolve to resist the urge to remain in a fit of cynicism and anger. May we pause and close our eyes often, remembering the song of love that embraces all of us. May we resist the tyranny of the times by becoming the better angels we seek. May we notice contentment in the moments when all we have is a breath. And when we can, may we commit to becoming a force for justice and positive change in a society that seeks to sustain pain and suffering. We can do this. We can do this together. Together. May it be so. May it be so.